The baby in your belly wants to say something.
During lunch with my mother-in-law and sister's family, my niece pointed at my belly.
Grandma, Grandpa in heaven is angry.
With the mysterious power of my 6-year-old niece's words, my mother-in-law turned pale. What she had been hiding was gradually coming to light. My name is Chloe. I'm 28 years old, married. I work as an office clerk at a small trading company. I reunited with my current husband, Henry, who was a classmate, at a reunion last year, and we swiftly progressed from dating to marriage. I always liked his good upbringing and gentle nature from our school days, so I was happy when he approached me at the reunion. His father ran a well-known company locally, and he was known as a rich kid in elementary school.
Long time no see. You look more mature now.
Long time no see. But isn't it natural to grow up? How have you been? Are you running your father's company now? When I casually asked.
No. My dad passed away 7 years ago, and the company was merged. I'm just a regular employee at another company now.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked so insensitively.
No. It's okay. I'm not cut out for running a company anyway. So, what's Chloe up to these days?
His good upbringing seemed unchanged, and it felt comfortable talking to him. It seems he, the serious type, had secretly liked me, the earnest class representative, back then. We made the next promise on the spot. We, who were starting to think about marriage, didn't take long to decide on each other as life partners. However, there were revelations after we got married, which have become my current source of distress.
Henry, Chloe, I'm coming in.
Early on Saturday morning, my mother-in-law came to our new home unannounced again. Oh, mother-in-law, welcome. I'm sorry it's messy. I greeted her with a forced smile.
It's messy. Even if you're both working, you should clean up properly on your days off.
She frowned. I was planning to clean up soon. I made excuses in my mind.
And your outfit. Chloe, you're a newlywed, so could you dress a bit more stylishly? Henry will be embarrassed. Okay? Wearing cheap clothes makes your whole personality look cheap.
She sighed dramatically. She was dressed up in full makeup and Coach items. Due to the sudden unannounced visit, I was in casual clothes without makeup. Those obvious brand name items are out of fashion now and even look tacky. While cursing silently in my mind, I just smiled and let it pass.
Honestly, Henry is kind, so he may not be able to say what he wants from his wife, but sometimes you have to speak up, you know?
She put her hand on his back.
Mom, I appreciate your concern, but Chloe has her job and is busy.
He said quietly.
Oh, look, even the flowers at the entrance are withering. I'll change the water for you. You can't have wilted flowers on display.
She dashed to the entrance as if she hadn't heard. So, she comes early in the morning on our day off and just keeps making snide remarks. She's eating away at my father-in-law's inheritance and splurging on expensive branded goods. So she's in a good position, isn't she? She doesn't know the struggles of working couples at all.
Oh no, that sounds tough. Doesn't Henry say anything?
Well, he tries to, but he's completely defeated. It seems like he never thought he could win against his mom from the start. He's kind of a pushover for her, after all. I was having coffee at my sister's house in the neighboring town, venting my frustrations.
Chloe, are you angry?
While I was complaining to my sister, My 6-year-old niece Grace came over and sat down. No. I'm not angry. Hey, Grace, want to play a card game? Talking like this in front of a child wasn't good. I turned towards my niece, reflecting on that.
Yay! Let's play poker.
She is sensitive, they say, but Grace has an extraordinary side to her. She's usually just a normal 6-year-old, but sometimes she speaks with a mysterious aura. There have been incidents like this before.
Mom, when we go to the shopping mall, we should take this road. It's dangerous from that side because there might be a car accident.
Ha! What are you saying, Grace? Stop joking around. It's scary.
At first, my sister laughed it off, but Grace's expression was serious, and it didn't seem like she was joking, so she got a little uneasy and decided to take a different route to the shopping mall, just in case. Immediately after, we heard sirens from an ambulance and a police car. Peeking from afar, it seemed there had been a collision between cars. My sister later told me that she shuddered at the thought of what might have happened if they hadn't believed her words and taken their usual route. There was also an incident where Grace told her mom's friend,
Tonight, the house next door seems to be on fire.
When my sister mentioned a previous incident where she predicted a traffic accident, her friend decided to stay at her parents' house that night. And indeed, the neighboring house had chores, and part of her friend's house had burned down. With a few incidents like this, Grace began to be praised by those around her as a girl with mysterious powers. They even received interview requests from the media several times, but my sister and her husband reportedly turned them all down. That's because after predicting something, Grace would lose consciousness and then invariably develop a high fever. If information about Grace were spread by the media, many people might try to exploit her power. When that happened, her body might not hold up. Thinking this way, my sister and her husband were extremely cautious not to publicize Grace's power. They even reminded the mom friend who was saved by Grace not to post about it on the internet.
Yay! I won. It's Grace's turn again.
Grace, who was excitedly playing poker, looked like just an ordinary 6-year-old girl. However, I had nursed her back to health after her predictions, and every time I remembered her suffering, my heart tightened. Whether she had special powers or not, I just wanted this child to grow up healthy and happy. I couldn't help but think that. One day, I was blessed with a long-awaited baby. When I told Henry about it, he was overjoyed.
That's fantastic, Chloe. I'm so happy.
He was teary-eyed with joy. He immediately called his mother to share the news. Seemingly asked to speak to me. When I took the phone,
Congratulations, Chloe. I have something I want to give you, so I'll be visiting soon.
she said with a cheerful voice, and I didn't feel bad about it. It seemed she had just said something nasty to me out of concern for her son. I was sure she would also dote on her grandchild. That's what I thought at the time.
Chloe, I bought this for you. It's a charm from a famous shrine for easy childbirth and organic foods said to be good for pregnant women.
When he wasn't there, my smiling mother-in-law visited and spread out what she had brought to the dining table. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for all this. As I began to say those words, she interrupted.
I got all of this through my connections, so it's a great deal. It's only $200, specially discounted. Normally, it's over $500. It's special, so cheap.
She said with a grin. Huh? Money? even though she brought it without asking? I'm sorry. I can't pay for this. I'll return everything you brought. As I tried to push it back, her face turned bright red.
What are you saying, rude daughter-in-law? I brought gifts to celebrate, you know.
With a loud shout, she left, making a loud noise as she went. Huh? Am I in the wrong here? Is it not wrong to bring unsolicited items and try to sell them? Come to think of it, even the organic food products she brought seemed cheap and suspicious. I decided to search for the product names I remembered online. The website was full of fake-sounding phrases like mystical power. Even incurable diseases are cured instantly. I'm glad I didn't buy anything. Why would she try to sell something like this anyway? Feeling thoroughly suspicious, I told my husband about this incident when he came home.
Ah. My mom just likes healthy foods and stuff.
He didn't seem to take it too seriously. But still, it's scary to have things brought over and sold to you without asking. Can't you talk to her about it nicely, Henry?
Got it. I'll talk to her.
But his tone sounded weak, and it didn't seem like he was being very firm. After he hung up the phone, how did it go? With your mom?
Ah. She said she'll come again next Sunday.
Huh? But next Sunday, we have plans to go to lunch with my sister's family, right?
Yeah. I told her that. But she said she'll come with us.
Huh? What's that about? I sighed at my husband, who couldn't assert himself with his mother. And then, the next Sunday.
Henry, Chloe, good morning. I wonder what we'll eat today.
The cheerful mother-in-law was standing in front of the house, completely different from last time. I didn't even say let's go together. I was feeling fed up. I had been looking forward to a fun lunch with my sister's family, but my mood plummeted with the appearance of my mother-in-law. The restaurant she chose had been selected with consideration for my morning sickness, but...
Well, let's go. Mom, Chloe.
He tried to accommodate both of us. My sister's husband couldn't make it due to a business trip. Maybe he thought it would be easier to talk if his mother was there. We had arranged to meet at a restaurant in a certain hotel. My sister waved when she saw us, but she looked puzzled when she saw my mother-in-law.
Hello. Chloe, thanks for always taking care of us.
My mother-in-law casually accepted my sister's greeting and loudly started looking through the menu.
I've always wanted to come to this restaurant. What should I eat? Maybe I'll have the sirloin steak, roast duck, and let them make me a sushi assortment.
She called over a waiter and started ordering on her own. We were all dumbfounded when...
Your husband works for that famous company, right? So, you can just pay for everything here with his card, right?
My mother-in-law grinned crudely. Wait. Did she plan to make us treat her from the start?
I don't have my husband's card with me.
My sister said, visibly annoyed. Mom. We'll pay for this ourselves. Henry hastily intervened. Oh, come on, my anticipated lunch was ruined. I sighed with my eyes closed. At that moment, my niece Grace, who had been silent until then, suddenly stood up.
What's wrong, Grace? Sit down. That's rude.
Ignoring my sister's words, Grace had a distant look in her eyes as if she were looking somewhere far away. That look. I glanced at my sister. It was a drastic change from her usual innocent expression to a strange, godlike gaze. It was the look she had when she predicted something.
The baby in your tummy has something to say.
Grace pointed to my belly. Grace was looking towards my mother-in-law.
Grandma, Grandpa in heaven is angry. You spent all the important money, didn't you? And you're borrowing money from bad uncles, right?
After saying that, she suddenly collapsed as if all the strength had left her body.
Grace. Are you okay?
My sister hurriedly picked Grace up.
I'll let her rest for a bit.
My sister said and rushed off with Grace in her arms. What just happened? I looked at my mother-in-law, who had turned pale and was trembling violently.
Mom? What's wrong with what the kid said?
My husband, who didn't know about Grace's power, seemed confused about what had happened, but he seemed to feel distrust towards his mother due to her change in attitude.
Well, you know, kids these days make strange jokes. I'll just go to the restroom.
Saying that, my mother-in-law hastily got up from her seat. I was worried about Grace, but I couldn't let my mother-in-law slip away here. A warning bell went off in my head. Henry, could you help my sister? Leaving my sister and niece to Henry, I followed after my mother-in-law. Hey, where are you going? The restroom is that way. I called out from behind her, who was pressing the elevator's down button. Could it be? You're not using up your late husband's inheritance and getting into debt, are you? That child, Grace, has a strange power and has predicted various things before. Come to think of it, something was bothering me. Trying to sell me organic food and wanting to pass the restaurant bill to others. For someone who dresses in luxury brands, she's oddly cheap with money. Could it be?
I couldn't stop buying luxury items with my husband's inheritance, and my fortune dwindled. I tried to cover the loss with investments, but ended up losing big and got into debt.
She spoke with her head bowed.
Chloe, you've relied on me all this time, haven't you? I raised Henry well, so your current wealth is thanks to me. So, lend me some money, okay? I'll make a big profit with this investment this time. Invest in me.
How shameless. Even without Grace's precognition, it's clear she will lose big on this investment too. And then she'll come begging for money again. Just then, Henry arrived.
Grace went home with your sister in a taxi. What's wrong, Mom? Chloe?
I explained the situation briefly, and...
Considering everything I've done for you, it's a small price to pay. Besides, if you...
Don't be ridiculous, Mom. I was just a student back then, and I didn't have the confidence to be a CEO. How much debt are we talking about here?
The amount she mentioned was a digit higher than we expected. We exchanged looks. With a baby on the way, we couldn't shoulder this amount of debt.
Mom, sorry, but you made that debt, and we can't take it on. I'll introduce you to an acquaintance who's a lawyer, so you can consult with them.
He said decisively, which was unusual for him.
That's it. Please don't contact us again.
She was still yelling something, but we left without looking back. Then, we moved and changed our address. Of course, we didn't inform my mother-in-law of the new address. We also set up call blocking on our phones. Afterward, according to what we heard from his relatives, it seems she went around begging for money from relatives and acquaintances, but ended up being estranged from them all. She's saying she doesn't want to declare bankruptcy because there are too many restrictions.
Honestly, She can't forget her lavish lifestyle from when she was well off. It's too naive to think someone will pay her debts.
It seems she is now being chased by debt collectors while living a lonely life in poverty. I gained a newfound respect for Henry, who couldn't say anything to his mother but firmly stated his position. He's starting to realize his role as a father, and he seems to have become a reliable man. And thanks to Grace's prediction at that time, I was grateful that my mother-in-law's debt had come to light. If we had continued to associate with her, we might have ended up burdened with debt without even realizing it. And then, 10 months later, I visited my sister's house with my newborn daughter.
Wow. A baby. So cute.
Grace comes running over.
Grace, you've got a cousin now.
Grace enthusiastically plays with the baby.
How have you been, sis? About Grace's precognition.
I asked her in a low voice.
Well, you know, it hasn't happened recently. It stopped completely when she started elementary school. Seems like that issue with Chloe's mother-in-law was the last straw.
My sister's tone as she spoke was a mix of relief and a little disappointment. I see. But that's a good thing. It's a relief for Grace's health too. Even without special powers, Grace is still Grace.
Yeah. Maybe someday when she grows up, we'll tell her about this. Like, there was something like this that happened in the past.
Saying that, we smiled at each other. How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Well then, let's meet in the next video. My name is Lily, and I am 49 years old. I have been working as an office clerk at a nearby factory for many years. Until just recently, I lived with my husband Toby, my mother-in-law Kim, and our only daughter Ellie at my in-laws' house. My married life lasted for 28 years, which I think is quite a long time. However, just recently, I put an end to that married life. Yes, I got divorced. It's what they call a late life divorce. Some people around me were surprised, while others said it couldn't be helped. My married life began when I was 20 years old and had an arranged meeting with my husband. At that time, I had graduated from a local commercial high school and was working as a clerical assistant at the factory where I still work today. It was my father's friend who brought up the idea of the arranged meeting with my husband-to-be.
We have a son around your age in our family. Would you like to meet him? He works as a civil servant at the city hall.
My mother supported the idea, saying,
A civil servant for a husband? That's a great opportunity for you. Please consider it.
My then husband gave off the impression of being serious and somewhat nervous.
Nice to meet you. I'm Toby.
During our first encounter, he seemed quite tense and didn't initiate much conversation. What kind of work do you do at the city hall? And what are your hobbies? He responded to my questions politely.
I work in the Citizen Services Division at the City Hall, mainly handling tasks like issuing resident certificates and working at the service counter. My hobby is fishing, and I often go to the river with my friends on weekends.
It felt like I had become an interviewer. However, I thought that with someone as earnest as him, I could build a reassuring home. After the arranged meeting, it was my husband who proposed to start dating. During our courtship, he remained as serious and quiet as ever. However, gradually he began to talk a bit about his hobby of fishing, and I thought maybe he was slowly opening up to me. About a year after the arranged meeting, we got married. Since he was an only child, I moved into my in-laws' house right after the wedding. At the arranged meeting, my mother-in-law remained silent, showing little interest and simply observing quietly, seemingly overshadowed by my father's friend. And because we hardly had any chances to meet during our courtship, I didn't know much about her. I assumed she might be as earnest as my husband. But that was a big mistake. My mother-in-law turned out to be a person full of problems. On the day I moved into my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law confronted me directly.
Now that you're married into this family, you must serve both me, your mother-in-law, and your husband, Toby, diligently. Backtalk will not be tolerated,
she said. I was taken aback by her sudden arrogance, but I replied in confusion. I may be inexperienced, but please treat me kindly. And then, from the next morning, my life changed completely. I was awakened at 4 a.m. to clean the house, prepare breakfast, and make my husband's lunch. Of course, I wasn't allowed to sit and eat breakfast. My mother-in-law said,
a daughter-in-law should eat standing up in the kitchen.
So, I stood in a corner of the kitchen and ate my breakfast. Naturally, I was responsible for all the cleaning up as well. What surprised me was that my mother-in-law was helping my husband with his morning preparations entirely. She would wake him up, bring a basin of water to his bedside, and say,
wash your face with this and wake up.
Furthermore, she would also choose and dress him in his outfit for the day. Watching my husband, dressed in the clothes she had picked out, my mother-in-law would smile with satisfaction, and my husband had a look on his face as if to say it was only natural. In addition, when I saw my husband being helped into his shoes before leaving for work, I was left speechless. I couldn't help but wonder if it was necessary for her to go that far. However, my mother-in-law, with hostility plain to see, said,
I'll take care of my child, so stay away.
My husband seemed to think it was only natural for his mother to take care of him. He didn't utter a word of thanks to his mother, making me wonder if he had no gratitude towards his own mother. But more than that, my mother-in-law's actions were shocking, and I realized that the future ahead would not be bright. Besides, my husband showed little interest in me. While his busy job played a role, he prioritized his hobbies on weekends. Let's go shopping together sometime, I would suggest, but he would respond,
I'd rather go fishing, so go by yourself.
Even when I persisted, saying, I want to go with you, he would coldly brush me off, saying,
There's no need for that.
The only occasions he would accompany me were those where it would be awkward if we didn't attend together, such as family gatherings or weddings and funerals of relatives or friends. I asked him, Why did you marry me?
Relatives around me were saying you're getting to that age where you should get married. But I didn't want to bother finding a partner myself, and a marriage proposal came along, so I married you.
He said such things outright. What's that supposed to mean? You didn't like me?
Not particularly. I neither like nor dislike you.
Those words shattered me, and I broke down in tears. I was devastated by my husband's words. My hardships continued further. While my mother-in-law treated my husband with great care, she was extremely harsh towards me.
You're such a useless wife, no matter what you do.
It became her constant refrain. Once, when I came home late due to overtime and quickly made dinner using curry mix, my mother-in-law said,
I won't let my child eat such lazy cooking.
And threw it away in the trash. There wasn't a day without complaints about the taste of the dishes being too strong or too weak. Even my husband's lunchbox was only allowed to contain the side dishes made that day. All the prepared side dishes for storage were thrown away. My mother-in-law found fault with every aspect of cleaning and laundry as well. She ordered me to polish the entrance floor every day, and just after I had finished, she would stomp on it with her dirty muddy shoes, saying,
It's still dirty.
When I did the laundry, she would complain,
The scent of this fabric softener is distasteful. Wash it again because it smells bad.
and she made me redo the laundry that I had just hung up. That alone would have been bearable since it stayed within our home. However, my mother-in-law had a bad habit. It was compulsive lying. She would spread lies about me to neighbors and relatives. Lies like I was neglecting household chores, mistreating my husband, or bullying my mother-in-law every day. She would tell these lies as if they were true, sometimes shedding tears, saying,
My daughter-in-law.
So everyone believed them wholeheartedly.
You should be more respectful to your mother-in-law.
She's the one who raised your husband, after all.
How many times did I hear such things from neighbors and relatives? As I was contemplating divorce, I found out I was pregnant. I thought that once the child was born, my husband would change. Even if he didn't care about me, he would surely dote on his own child. And perhaps, through the grandchild, my relationship with my mother-in-law could improve. At that time, that's what I hoped for, but it turned out to be a huge mistake. They had both hoped for a boy. During childbirth, they were present at the hospital. But when they heard the gender of the newborn, they quickly left without even looking at the child's face.
What? A girl.
I still remember my husband's words as if it were yesterday.
A girl.
My mother-in-law also sighed with a disappointed expression on her face. I named our daughter Ellie, a name I had chosen. They had only considered names for boys. It seemed that my husband dreamed of going fishing with a son, and my mother-in-law wanted a grandson who resembled my husband. Therefore, neither my husband nor my mother-in-law paid any attention to my daughter. But at that time, I believed that as they spent time together, affection would grow, and they would come to cherish her. My husband did contribute to our daughter's education expenses and attended necessary events as a father. However, it was merely fulfilling the obligation of this is what parents should do due to societal expectations. While there was no abuse, there was a significant lack of emotional connection between parent and child. My mother-in-law was the same, and as our daughter grew, she also distanced herself from my husband and mother-in-law. I've thought about divorce many times, but despite being such a husband, he does fulfill the minimum duties as a father. Perhaps having a father around might be better for handling unforeseen circumstances in the future, something I, as a mother, might not be able to handle alone. Plus, he earns more than I do. Thinking about the future expenses for our daughter, I couldn't easily go through with a divorce. When my daughter reached high school age, she seemed to sense my situation.
It's okay to divorce Dad. I'll get a part-time job,
she said. But even if I wanted to divorce and return to my parents' home, they had already passed away, and I only had my brother and his wife, so I would just be a burden if I went back. I struggled every day, juggling household chores, work, and taking care of my daughter. However, the event that finally put an end to that life happened when my daughter became an adult and started working. It all started with my mother-in-law's hospitalization. On a bitterly cold winter day, she went out for her usual early morning walk and slipped on the frozen road, falling down. Unable to move, she was found by a newspaper delivery person who called for emergency assistance. Both my husband and I took urgent leave from work and rushed to the hospital. However, when the doctor informed us
Given her age, her bones and muscle strength are weakened. Even if she recovers, it's uncertain whether she'll regain full mobility.
My husband, indifferent, simply responded with,
"Oh, I see.
and then he said,
Please discuss the rest with my wife."
I was left to handle everything. My husband didn't even visit my mother-in-law at the hospital. On weekends, he continued to indulge in his hobby of fishing as usual. Every day after work, I would stop by her hospital room, bringing her laundry and taking care of her needs. However, my mother-in-law complained to the attending nurses.
My daughter-in-law is really thoughtless and unhelpful. It's troubling.
The nurses tried to reassure her.
Having someone visit every day is wonderful. You have a good daughter-in-law.
But my mother-in-law continued with her complaints.
That woman only puts on a good face in front of others. She always bullied me. It was really tough.
And she continued to spread lies. To make matters worse, she blamed me for my husband not coming to visit her. My mother-in-law berated me, saying,
It's because you're filling his head with nonsense that my son isn't coming. You're truly a terrible daughter-in-law.
Unable to admit that he was off fishing while neglecting his mother, I could only try to cover it up by saying, "He's very busy." As the doctor predicted, my mother-in-law's broken bones were taking a long time to heal. With a severe flu epidemic spreading in the community, signs of the outbreak were beginning to show even within the hospital. Amidst this situation, my mother-in-law contracted the flu, causing a high fever. Even in such circumstances, my husband remained indifferent. How can you go fishing when your own mother is in danger? Show some concern for your mother. I admonished him. But my husband replied,
"I told you to handle it."
And continued going fishing. I couldn't help but deeply despise him for his heartlessness, despite how well my mother-in-law had treated him. And then, an incident occurred that made me completely fed up with my husband. On a weekend morning, as my husband was once again preparing to go fishing, I caught him at the front door and said firmly, "Today, you're absolutely going to visit your mother. After all the care she has shown you, the least you can do is pay her a visit." But my husband looked truly disgusted and replied,
"That was her own choice. I never asked her to do anything for me."
I was speechless at his words. I couldn't believe it. Ignoring my stunned silence, my husband continued,
"My fishing buddies are waiting for me. I won't be back until the day after tomorrow."
and walked out the door. Watching him leave, my daughter muttered with genuine disgust,
"Dad, that's just too much."
That night, I received a call from the hospital informing me that my mother-in-law's condition had deteriorated critically. I rushed to the hospital immediately. By the time I arrived, my mother-in-law had already been transferred to the intensive care unit and was wearing an oxygen mask. It seemed she had developed pneumonia as well. The doctor said,
"Tonight may be critical."
Naturally, I tried contacting my husband right away, but he ignored my messages on WhatsApp, didn't pick up my calls, and didn't respond to my emails. I felt deeply disgusted with my husband and questioned why I should continue running around for my mother-in-law, who had treated me so poorly. Why should I be the one to be by her side in her final moments? Shouldn't that be the duty of her own son, my husband? After all, I hadn't received any kindness from my mother-in-law. Despite his mother being critically ill, my husband prioritizes his own leisure activities. Why should I exhaust myself for people like them? I've had enough. Those thoughts crossed my mind. Well then, I'll excuse myself.
What?
I left the office, leaving behind a bewildered doctor. It's better for my husband to be here than me, so I'll go home. With that, I quickly left the hospital. When I arrived home, my daughter, with a worried look on her face, was waiting for me.
How did it go?
She asked. Tonight might be critical, but I didn't want to take care of that person, so I came back. Hearing this, my daughter responded,
I understand. So, what are you going to do now?
I'm going to divorce your father. You're grown up now.
That sounds good. If you divorce, I'll live on my own. I've been worried about you all this time.
I see. Thank you. The next day, we left my in-laws' house early in the morning. Though it might have been a bit uncomfortable, we decided to go back to our parents' house. When we explained the situation to my brother and his wife, they scolded us, asking why we hadn't told them earlier. A while later, my husband bombarded my phone with calls and WhatsApp messages, but I ignored them and contacted him a few days later.
What the hell are you doing?
Who knows?
My mom's critically ill, and you just left, didn't you? Because of that, I had to rush back from my trip.
Well, yeah. She's your mother, so it's only natural for you to take care of her.
I told you to take care of her.
I never said I would do it. Besides, considering how much she took care of you, wouldn't it be appropriate for you to repay that kindness a bit? With a rather harsh tone, I silenced my husband, but I pressed on. So, how is your mother?
She's stabilized, but she's lost a lot of strength, and they say it's going to be difficult for her to move around like before.
So, are you considering moving her to a care facility?
That costs a lot of money. It's your job to take care of her.
I don't care.
Huh.
My single response seemed to puzzle my husband. I said I don't care. I don't want to be married to someone who is indifferent when others are in trouble. And I have no intention of taking care of a deceitful mother-in-law like yours.
So, are you saying you want a divorce?
That's right. I'm divorcing you. Ellie agrees with me.
Is she really going to abandon her grandmother and father?
Huh? You two have been indifferent to Ellie all this time. You've hardly been involved with her, and now you're talking about abandonment? Don't be ridiculous. Toby fell silent again, but soon he spoke up.
But you're just a clerk at a small-town factory, right? Won't you struggle financially if we divorce?
This time, he mocked my profession and used financial matters as a shield. Oh, don't worry about that. I earn just as much as you do.
That's a lie, isn't it?
It's not a lie. How long do you think I've been working at that company? I'm already in a managerial position, and I'm going to be promoted to an executive role soon. So, I won't have any financial problems, especially now that Ellie is an adult. I worked at that factory ever since I graduated, juggling household chores and childcare. There were many times when I wanted to quit due to the physical strain, but I couldn't afford to lose my job as it would mean losing income, and I had to consider the worst-case scenario. So, I worked desperately. After over a decade, the company grew from a small local factory to one of the largest in the region, and I found myself promoted to a managerial position. Eventually, I even reached the position of a board member. It's no wonder that my indifferent husband didn't know about it. His only concern was fishing. I've already decided to divorce you, so from now on, Let's communicate through lawyers.
Wait a minute, aren't we a married couple? Let's talk it over.
I'm not waiting. After this incident, I've come to realize that you're a selfish person who only thinks about yourself. So, goodbye. I cut off the call despite Toby's attempts to stop me. Afterwards, I proceeded with the divorce through my lawyer. My husband objected to the divorce, saying,
Divorce would tarnish my reputation. Besides, my mother needs care.
However, since I insisted firmly on getting divorced, he reluctantly signed the divorce papers. Of course, I received adequate compensation and asset distribution. It seems that my ex-husband is ultimately taking care of my former mother-in-law at home. He apparently wanted to place her in a care facility, but she refused and insisted on being cared for by her son at home. However, given his previous indifference towards others, he is unlikely to be capable of the meticulous care required for caregiving, and my former mother-in-law is reportedly being treated roughly by him, leading to a deterioration in their relationship. I heard that there is constant tension and battles between them every day. Just the other day, as I passed by their house, I heard them arguing loudly, and when I asked the neighbors what was going on, they chuckled and said that today was still relatively calm, as they often have intense fights until late at night. My daughter Ellie has started living on her own, and I have also rented an apartment near my workplace. Since pets are allowed in that apartment, I recently started keeping a turtle. Watching the relaxed demeanor of the turtle, I feel like the hectic pace of my life has somehow slowed down. I want to start using my time for myself from now on. With that in mind, I am spending today energetically as well.